Welcome back to Morning Coffee with. It is 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, so some of you will be drinking or having lunch, and it is 10 a.m. LA time over there with Shonda. Good morning.
Good morning, and I do have my tea because even though we say morning coffee with, I'm a tea drinker.
I understand that. I stick to the coffee because I need the energy all day. But I do want to share, like, I have this little mug here that says, I love you. And I just kind of want to put that note out here.
Yes.
Holding space. We've had this
Mhm.
beautiful opportunity to begin a talk on the front end with Lonnie Harrington, our guest,
Yes.
and want to hold space, take a second just to hold space for these holiday times where many of us are under different and new types of pressure and
Yes.
have lost in the midst of everything. We just want to hold space for those who are no longer here with us and for
Mm-hmm.
those who continue in the journey and holding their spirits close to us. I want to say, I
Hmm.
love you all and start the show with that sentiment.
Yes, I love that. I love the feeling of starting that with a sense of like that love and the feeling of warmth and just being cherished, in these times. So yeah, I love that, Nichelle. Thank you for starting that,
Oh, thank you.
establishing that space.
We need that space. There's no fatigue because we know that when we go to our closed doors that we all mourn and miss people that we love, and so we
Mhm.
want to know that they want to keep them in our space with us even as we celebrate, even
Yep.
as we continue on. Um but welcome, Lonnie. Let's welcome you and thank you for being on this installment of reclaiming our heritage and
Yes.
celebrating our heritage.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Mhm.
So normally we start off with song, and Shonda takes us into that space. Shonda, did you want to start off, or should we go ahead with our acknowledgments?
I do actually. In the spirit of the love, I want to sing a song that I learned in the Sweat Lodge from a friend of mine. And it's interesting, this song came to mind this morning because uh, of the times that we're in, but also when I was thinking about singing the song, and I was connecting it to why did I always feel like this song was for me? And then I realized if we think a message is for us, it probably is, even if someone doesn't intend it, right? And so this is a song for the South, for the mouse in the South, and that mouse is humility and patience and just like taking your time. And so this is the song for the mouse in the South, and I'm happy to just sing a couple of pieces of it. Hey you, hey you, hey you, hey you, hey you, hey you. And we just could imagine that mouse kind of, creeping along. Hey you, hey you, hey you. And everyone in our lodge joins in. Hey you, hey you, hey you. I hope.
And I tell you, respect, sister. Can I share something with you? It's
Yes.
actually a traditional Seminole story, which I'm not going to go into. But the bottom line is that we have to respect mice, especially if they get into our corn. So
Hmm.
even occasionally when I've got mice in my place up here, especially around the time of my green corn ceremony, they actually ate up some old sacred corn I was gifted from a holy man. I was 600 years old, but
Oh,
because of our
wow.
traditions, I couldn't do anything with them, so I had to let them eat eat the corn.
Right. Apparently it was time to eat it.
Yeah, yeah.
Not time for new corn. Starting some new corn. It'll be 600 years old for your great greats.
We shall see. They did a very good service to the community. So as a result of that, we have to honor the mice when they get into the corn. So
Yeah.
I've been culturally sensitive and I've honored that.
Yep. Oh, good. I'm glad that song was appropriate. Yeah. Glad.
And beautiful. Thank you. Every
Thank you,
time I
Nichelle.
hear
Thank you.
your voice, feel all of the spirit and the intention of the ancestors. I
Thank you,
appreciate
sis.
you starting us there.
Thank you, sis.
As we go into this knowledge sharing together, I want to first give acknowledgement to our platform, to everyone who makes this happen every month,
Yes.
every last Sunday, right?
Yep. Last Sunday.
Every last Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern time and 10 a.m. Pacific time. I have to always remember that it's morning time there. So thank you for all joining in with us. This is a collaborative effort between I Love Ancestry platform, which you are viewing us.
Thank you, Adrienne.
Yes, shout out to Adrienne.
Hey, Adrienne.
Thank you. And we're just going to lift up Adrienne as well in this space because he put so much into the community. It's a community and a network, and it's powered by Mother Earth Sanctuary. Danica Mays is behind the scenes.
Thank you, Danica.
Shout out to Danica. So although you may not see their faces, they are there. They are there making this work. And of course, Shonda Buchanan. And
Nichelle, the superb producer, co-host. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just appreciate the sisterhood and the community in this. And so we want to shout out our community. You can check us all out on our respective pages, and we'll share that at the end. And also we have at the end of today's talk, we will have AHA, Karen White, who will be sharing a little bit about Ancestry for the last 15 minutes. So you get always going to get your ancestry information that you need going forward. And so that's my shout outs to everyone, and of course acknowledgements. And then I think we can move on.
And let's move on. And thank you to the viewers. Yes, thank you to the viewers. We're so grateful that you're here. Please share Morning Coffee with your folks, and let people know that we are out here talking about what it means to be Black Indian, to talk about the heritage, the culture, honoring our ancestors. So thank you to the viewers, and shout us out, hit us up on our social media, and let us know what you think.
Absolutely, and we'll share that at the end. So I would like to, and Shonda, if you're in agreement, if we can move into setting our intentions and having this amazing knowledge sharing with Lonnie Harrington. Just the pre-show was already amazing, because I could tell you're full of information. So I'm so thankful to sit with both of you.
Absolutely.
Up with me.
Thank you. I think my intention is just to enjoy and to be in the space of love. I'll say that.
I'm here to share. I'm interested to hear what my sisters have to share, and certainly anything I have, I'm willing to depart with.
And I'm in the learning seat. I'm always amazed by the information that I learn, and I'm in the learning seat, and I am just kind of representative of our audience who's hopefully joining in the learning seat and may have knowledge to share. And we invite you to use that chat box to share. And Lonnie today has offered as a giveaway, his book, Both Sides of the Water.
Yay, thank you, Lonnie.
So please make sure you're in that chat box so you can find out how to give away. Oh, thank you for showing the book. Yes. Yay. So how you can get a copy of that at the end today.
Can I just say something, Nichelle? And I was explaining to you in the pre-show. This is the original first edition. Not going into the legal matters, the next edition that will be made available to the publisher is going to be minus a quote from James Baldwin. So whoever gets the book today will have the original edition with this quote from James Baldwin, which appears on page 9.
What's the quote?
The quote, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, by reading this in Nichelle earlier, I realized I do have an appointment with my eye doctor next month. I really need to see him, no pun intended.
Good to know.
But this is the quote. Both continents, Africa and America, be it remembered, were discovered. What a wealth of arrogance that little word contains. With devastating results for the indigenous populations, whose only known use thereafter was a source of capital for white people. On both continents, the white and dark gods met in combat, and it's on the outcome of this combat that the future of both continents depends. That's from No Name in the Street, published in 1972.
Wow. And why is the quote being taken out?
Because legally, the book was published in 2007, and from the James Baldwin estate, I only got permission to use it in 7-year increments. I don't have permission to continue it after this year, and that was up as of February of this year.
Okay.
The pandemic being what it is, it's been kind of slow with the editing process with the publisher. So if anyone's interested in original copies of the book, they can contact me, and some lucky person's going to get a free copy. So
then that's lovely. That's lovely. How when did you publish the book originally?
March of 2007.
Okay. All right. I love that. Thank you. So to whoever hits us up in the chat, you will be getting a free copy of Lonnie's book with the original James Baldwin quote. And we all know that James Baldwin is one of our most prolific writers and most important writers. So, incredibly, usually incredibly happy to get that. So I want to introduce our guest with his amazing bio. But actually, I'm going to introduce him first through the sense of community and how I know Lonnie. So many years ago, Lonnie came to speak at one of our events in Virginia for the Wyanoke Association, and I was blown away by what he offered in what he said, just like the energy, and I have to shout out the Wyanoke Association is an organization started by Anita Harrell and Hugh Harrell in Hampton, Virginia. And these two amazing people got to, they were married. Hugh has since passed, so we raised him up in our words and our ancestry. One of the most smartest men, most connected men to like history and heritage of Black culture that I ever knew. So I'm shouting out my ancestor Hugh Harrell. Just hearing Lonnie speak about the history of heritage, what it meant to be maybe 15 years ago.
It was around the time that the book came out, so yeah.
Somewhere around there, 15 or on my radar. Let's say it again.
2007, because right after the book came out, as a matter of fact.
Okay. So 2007, and I've just always had him on my radar as someone who just knew the culture, and I just incredibly respect you, Lonnie. So can I read your bio? Is that okay?
Certainly.
Okay, Lonnie Harrington was born in Tallahassee, Florida, and should I say the date?
Sure, I'm an old timer. I'm a used car.
1952, of African, Seminole, Cherokee, Choctaw, and Shawnee ancestry. In 1957, he moved to Dania, Florida, where his mother would take him on visits to the Dania. Say it again. Dania Seminole Reservation, now called Hollywood. He came to New York City in 1959, where his mother had relocated, attending Hunter College and the New School for Social Research in the early 70s. He began independent research into Native American and African relations in 1972. He has continued this endeavor through the present. Professionally, as a musician, he has performed at nightclubs, concert venues, cultural centers, and festivals as a sideman and band leader since the early 1970s. He released the album Northern Tropicale, is that correct? And Other Romantic Illusions in September 2017, and the instrumental I Wonder in September 2018. He continues to perform in the present as a storyteller. He has performed at numerous venues for all ages, ranging from cultural centers to festivals since 1996. As a men's traditional dancer, which I have had the pleasure of dancing with him, at Pow Wows. He danced at Pow Wows and cultural events throughout the American Northeast and California. From February 1992 through October 2003, he was a member of the Drum Circle Singers, a New York City-based Native American drum group. He has also sang with the Iron Feather Singers and is currently a member of Red Thunder Bear Singers. This is a lot of amazing work that you're doing. He has also sat in with other drum groups such as Silver Cloud Singers, Hey Na, Second Sons, and Red Storm, among others. As an art administrator, he's served as a consultant to arts organizations and worked for the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs from 1977 to 1981. While working for the city agency in 1979, he was assigned a joint project with a new arts education organization known as Arts Connection. He formally came on the staff in 1981 and remained with this organization through June 2018. Joining the Intertribal Northeastern Native American Association of Queens, New York in 1991, he served as the organization's historian and chaired the 1992, 93, and 94 powwow committees. I wish I would have been there to dance at those powwows. Okay. He remained on this committee through 2003. In the mid-90s, he was a member of the Torn Pages Project, a coalition which researched and explored Black Native American relations. He's the author of Both Sides of the Water, Essays on African Native American Interactions, published in 2007 by Rose Dog Books. And that is a lot, but I'm sure not the end. So welcome, Lonnie, to our show, and thank you so very much for being on it.
Let me give a shout out, though, because you mentioned the powwows. Actually, two photos appear in one of Chester Higgins' books. I believe Chasing the Spirits, but he has two photos from the powwow in that particular book.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Photojournalist of our culture.
That's amazing. Yeah, Chester Higgins is just renowned. That's amazing. I love that.
Wow, it's so amazing. Your such range from his history to music. We were talking a little bit beforehand about sharing some Florida connections. I wasn't raised in Florida, born in Florida, but I did live there for 12 years, and not too far from where you were raised, right? In Dania Beach.
Well, I spent my boyhood in Dania, yes.
In Dania, okay.
Dania.
So you see, I'm an outsider because I call it Dania. So I'm in Dania Beach. So and we could start off with just kind of talk about your First Nations indigenous blood, your ancestry, and your connections and heritage.
Well, let me start out with this, again, to pay respect to where I'm from originally. To those ancestors, my mother's side of the family, Chiantamo, Ishtongo. And I got to give some props a little bit further north to my father's side of the family, Osio, Halito, Hatito. Mm-hmm. Be that as it may, I'm originally from a place known to the Ueyache, the ancient ones, as Ikeni-Yuxka, the land blessed by the sun, the moon, and the children, the stars. Some other of the Ueyache called it Ichibi, which means deer nose. And I don't know how without an airplane, those ancestors knew what the whole land looked like, a deer nose back then. But a slaver by the name of Ponce de Leon gets there. We've been calling it Florida ever since. And yes, I went there. Wow. Again, I want to pay, let's call it for what it is. That's the original one.
Let's do it.
And I, in terms of my heritage on this side of the ocean, I was actually born in the territory part of one of our traditional villages, Tallahassee. As a matter of fact, 68 years ago yesterday.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I love how you give that sense of history and heritage. And the first question, Nichelle, did you want to get that first question? I love this.
Sorry, I muted myself just so make sure the sound was clear. Yes.
I think it's a perfect segue. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. How did you learn about your background? Was it through research or was it through oral history, right? Because a great part of the show is about ancestry, but people don't know where to start. So it's very inspiring to know that you know so much. How did you start that, and what forms did it take?
Well, the roots, I got to blame it on my mother, who's still with us at 91. And I was telling Nichelle before, I'm still scared of her.
That's good.
She took me to visit the Dania Reservation. in 1957. I don't know how many times, but, and I can't say anything very profound happened, but childhood images which I still carry. My grandmother, her mother, had some issues, respectively grandmama, as far as honoring that side of the heritage. She actually forbid my mother as a girl from visiting our relatives, not so much on the reservation, but some Seminoles actually used to have a camp when they come out of the Everglades. They hadn't, the bands hadn't come into the reservation yet, so they'd spend part of the year in the Everglades and other parts of the year near Highway 1 in Dania, alligator wrestling and selling things to tourists. My grandmother forbid my mother from going to the camps, but my mother did anyway. Now, interestingly enough, my mother's stepfather and I will always lovingly acknowledge Jake Robinson as my grandfather. And I was to find out as an adult that he himself was Seminole. Basically told my mother, because he knew where she was going, he says, if you get caught by your mama, I don't know nothing. So Papa turned his back on that, and Ma used to visit our relatives in that camp. Turns out now being on the Pow Wow Trail, and you got, Shonda knows you got to be careful. I got cousins every place. One of the brothers, and I was telling, I think Nichelle about earlier, turns out after we knew each other 20 years, turns out we found out we're cousins, and we actually had ancestors and relatives in that camp as well. So that's one part.
That's happened to me many times.
Oh, I could go on and on, but I'm going to keep the PG version. But you know, Seminole girl, right? I don't think she was my cousin. Sister had me tripping, but okay, I'll behave. That's my mother's side of the family. I never met my father's mother. My father's mother was Cherokee and Choctaw. I was to find out later as an adult, though, that my grandfather's mother was Shawnee and actually was married to a former Buffalo soldier. A man, and yeah, I'm going to go there too. My great-grandfather was one of the soldiers that took San Juan Hill, not Teddy Roosevelt. Buffalo soldiers that did that. And yeah, I annoyed being polite. You got ladies in my presence.
Yes.
Hey, the Buffalo soldiers took San Juan Hill, and my great-grandfather was one of those soldiers that did that. Teddy Roosevelt had the opportunity to correct that. He never did.
Wow.
Let me calm down.
That's a book. That's like a book. That's or at least an article or something, but that's a book. Keep going. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's my father's side of the family, which is the Cherokee, Choctaw, and Shawnee side.
Yeah.
And as an adult, coming from a place like Florida, well, as a boy, coming from Florida to New York, and some of us that are older making that diaspora coming out of the rural South into the cities, knows it's a stigma when you labeled country and everything that that implies. So unfortunately, we were taught to suppress our indigenous side to a large degree. And some of that also too, I think, came from insecurities about what we have gone through as Black people as well. Given the drama, whenever we tried to pay homage and how we were oppressed when anytime we tried to honor that side of our ancestry. Let's face it, the drum was oppressed here. And we find, you know, not that oppression didn't exist elsewhere, but it's a little bit different in the Caribbean and south of the Rio Grande, where folks were able to hold on to the drum. So that's a little bit of a different dynamic there. But here in what we call the United States and North America, unfortunately, many of these other stories and heritages that we brought with us, we've had to suppress for a number of years. So anyway, for the sake of brevity, as an adult, I went back to my heritage, realizing after some research, and this gets into my research, which I started in 1972, when I realized what it was to be a Seminole man. I will say quite proudly, nobody can tell me nothing now because I know who I am. And I know what I am. And I pay homage to all sides of my heritage and my ancestry. So yes.
Talk about that. Talk about like how you became, when you said you started in 1972, did you start, for example, I guess for me, it was like, okay, how do I make my own regalia? You know what I mean? So how did you become a Seminole man, you know? And then did you have any like, oh, I'm going to be like John Horse, or, you know what I mean?
I have to say this, and I'm getting goosebumps now, and I'm almost in tears because he's my hero. I found out this year I'm related to him. So.
Wow.
No, you're kidding.
Wow.
It's not that, again, cousins, you know, we start talking, you're my cousin.
Wow.
And, you know, growing up, I'm sisters, excuse me,
amazing.
I'm a hero. I mean, mythic proportions.
Yeah.
I find out that I'm blessed.
Yeah. But see, and that's how the ancestry piece works. Do you know what I mean? It's like we are searching for our ancestors, but they are also searching for us.
Come on, know? They are also searching for us.
Sankofa.
I love that. And for our listeners, could you tell us, situate us with John Horse in case someone's not familiar?
He's one of our Afro-Seminole freedom fighters, starting out in Florida, into Indian Territory. He, again, for the sake of brevity, as a matter of fact, he, another one of our great fighters, a number of fighters were captured by trickery and imprisoned in St. Augustine, but John Horse and some others managed to escape. Unfortunately, our elder Osceola was too sick to escape and would die a few months later from that illness. But after that escape on 1838, Grandfather Horse, along with others, led the resistance in Florida. He led communities in what's Indian Territory, what we now call Oklahoma. But when things started getting really crazy, as of 1849, he and Coacachi, or Wildcat, led an exodus, the first of several exoduses, from Indian Territory into Northeast Mexico, where there's still some Seminole communities there. It's believed, well, he was last seen alive in August 9th of 1882. He was on his way back from negotiating from Mexico City back to the Seminole communities in the northeastern part of the country. And he disappeared on that voyage back to the community. That was the last time he was seen alive.
Wow.
But again, well, like I said, I'm my hero.
Yeah.
And Comilacate, his family.
Right.
I have to add this though, because again, it was not only just coming from the Black community. I remember being harassed verbally and sometimes almost to the point of violence in high school whenever I tried to mention my heritage. So it became all that much more profound as I started to do my research. And I'll get back to your question directly in a moment, Shonda. But especially when I started realizing who I am as a Seminole man, like I said, nobody could tell me nothing. And this is going back now to 1981. My son, who's now 44, bore the brunt of it because I came up doing research. I sat him down, who's 5 years old. Champ, we fought back, huh? Champ, we fought back, huh, Daddy? We fought back, remember that, huh?
I love that.
But anyway, what happened in college, I made friends with a brother, not that it made a difference, but he was a full-blood Cheyenne. And I sort of shyly mentioned my heritage, and when I did, he hugged me. And I was pleasantly surprised because before then I would always be ostracized whenever, oh, you try not to be Black kind of thing. This Cheyenne brother accepted me as a brother. And he introduced me to other Native brothers in the college community there. And I just started to read at that point. It wasn't as focused. Again, on my journey, I left school to gig with some bands, R&B bands based out of Boston in the mid and early 70s. One band I played with was a bass player from Brazil, and he told me about capoeira. And I started looking into the quilombos and the free Black communities, which were often integrated communities, usually red and Black. So it started to get more focused there.
Right.
Came back in 1977 from the Boston area, actually late 76, continued doing my research based on the Maroon societies. One thing led to another. And I remember the moment of realization when I decided to look at my own heritage because I read about the Battle of the Negro Fort. Shena Uiache, I pay respect to my ancestors. That still moves me. I don't talk about the Alamo. Well, actually, I do talk trash about the Alamo because, hey, I ain't going to respect anything that's going to try to save slavery. I look at the Battle of the Negro Fort. That was our Alamo. That's where my ancestors' blood was shed on the Apalachicola River. It was Andrew Jackson, the Tatiyahe Chinte, the chicken snake is what we call it.
I know. Snake.
I like that because, everybody calls him the Indian killer, right? You know, and then the orchestrator of the 5 civilized tribes removal, the Indian Removal Act as well.
And the oral history stories that had been passed down, the things he set in motion. But anyway, for us, he's a personification of evil. And quote me on there, and I will go there and get anybody's face once they take me.
I agree. I agree.
It's only decaf. I'm glad I drink decaf. Okay.
Oh, good for you. No, I'm so glad. So the Andrew Jackson reference, I actually talk about him, and I'm plugging my own book, Black Indian, as well. You know, and I talk about how, he did an incredible, this is an underwhelming word, disservice to Indian nations across the country. And so for those of us Black Indians who are trying to reclaim those histories and heritages, it's really just, for me, it's been going from one document or one courthouse or one county registrar's office or just to find the trail and retrace the trail of my ancestors. And I'm really curious as to how that happened for you. Like, how did you go back and like, what were the documents? Where did you go first and foremost to find the actual names? Like, what documents did you keep? Where can other Black Indians go in your area or in your perspective to try to find their own connections, try to find their own ancestry?
Well, let me just say this, no one size fits all. And
Yeah.
every situation is unique. I've been doing research, and I continue to do research, like I said, since 1972. And it's taking me every place from, there used to be a resource here in New York City in the Bronx, known as the Huntington Free Library. It had one of the most incredible collections on Native American history in the hemisphere.
Really?
Can we let's stay for 1 second? Could you please repeat that? Maybe we can get that in the
Unfortunately, it's
chat
no
box.
longer there, though.
Oh, okay.
But the archives are somewhere.
Unfortunately, they gave a lot of the collection away.
What was it called?
The Huntington Free Library. And a lot of us who do research, we've sorely missed that today.
We've got a Huntington here in Pasadena, in California. I'm going to look that up.
Maybe there's a connection there. That I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, my journey's taking me everywhere, from certainly the Schaumburg here in New York City. At one point, my last trip back to Florida, I actually got permission to use the Dorothy Scott Osceola Library on the Hollywood Seminole Reservation.
Oh,
They
wow.
were nice enough to let me in there. But talk to your elders. And by the way, those times when they may have had a little bit too much at a family gathering and start talking, don't dismiss them. There's knowledge there.
Yes.
It's funny enough, people say, hey, you've become that elder. And I'm like, huh?
That's really timely too, right? So just remembering, like, even though people are meeting virtually across the country, this is also another time that you can ask those questions. Everybody is on to do that if you can't do it in person. So that's why we knew you were the perfect person to kind of illuminate this conversation around the holidays, because this is the perfect time to share knowledge. It's not just about the present, is also bridging the past and present. So thank you.
Well, interestingly enough, on a sidebar, even though she can't speak it at all, and I'm not fluent by any stretch of the imagination, I do know some phrases both in Ilapanki or Miccosukee and Creek, which are two languages Seminole people speak. And I jokingly but seriously say I speak just enough of both when I've been on the res to get myself in trouble with everybody.
Yeah.
But my mother often asked me to speak to her in Ilapanki. And I think that's from her time she spent in the camps as a girl. And she just loves to hear me say that, as bad as my accent is.
Wow.
So yeah, it's interesting how these things carry on.
Yeah. When did you start making your regalia, though? Like, so you said you were going to come back to my "How did you become a Seminole man?" question. When did you start doing that?
Putting my regalia together. It's interesting because I've been going to Pow Wows in this area since 1981. Okay. And I only do the social dances, but other elders and other folks started saying, "Hey, you really should dance. You really should dance." I didn't start dancing until 1992. And at that point, and this is also interesting, and Shonda, you may experience this also, then you get into this whole intertribal thing, because initially for many years, I would say up to maybe about 15, maybe 20 years ago, because among my heritage, Alabigi, we wear turbans. And boy, people were talking behind my back about that. Nobody come up to my face and say anything. But, so get the whole intertribal thing going. But no, it's my ancestors. This is what we wear. This is my regalia.
Yep.
And now I have other folks, since I do my turban every time, that I'm not wrapped too tight, but that's a whole other thing we're not going to go into right now.
So when you started wearing, how, like, when I say, how did you start making your regalia? Did you see pictures of the Seminole men and you said, I'm going to wrap my head like that? Or did a sister come to you and help you? I'm so curious about that. And a lot of other people are curious too.
Well, I slowly started approaching other Seminole people in the area, and I did so respectfully, because I know especially folks that are originally from reservation communities, understandably, are kind of cautious from outsiders. But over time, when people realized who it was, and I would have these discussions, they'd share.
Yep.
And I learned how to make the turban.
That's key. Yep.
Yeah. And I'll say this again. I'm wearing a vest that Danica gave me compliments on. If you saw me try to make anything, you'll be glad I'm a musician. So other folks have helped me with other things. Like my Pokshitobi, my big shirts were made by other folks, but they've helped me with things like that.
Yeah.
Small things like, for example, my dance staff. I've got a gator head on my dance staff because, hey, that's where I'm from.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I've only seen 2 other brothers up here that have gators on their dance staffs.
Yeah.
So I put my regalia together slowly with the help of other folks,
Yeah.
starting in about the mid-90s.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I'm a Southeastern man. No doubt, I'm a
Same.
Southeastern man.
My nation, the Kahari Eastern Band Cherokee, on my end, Southeast, Sampson County, North Carolina, Halifax, NC. So yes.
But we might be cousins, Shonda.
We sure could be cousins. And it's interesting too when you say that people were talking about you behind your back because of your regalia. Is that in New York only? Because I had that feeling that people were talking about me when I first started dancing with the regalia that that someone helped me make.
Somebody came to me at a place where I was singing and dancing in Rhode Island at a powwow. And although I started to get angry on one hand, I was thinking, well, wow, come talk to me. Let's talk. Let's learn from each other. But no, I said, no, I'm not going to wear something else. This is my heritage. This is who I am. These are my ancestors. And again, let's talk. Let's exchange. I can learn something from you. You can learn something from me.
Yeah.
So no, it's happened more in other places.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, when I started doing that, other Southeastern people, goodness, respect. I remember a grandmother who had a food stall, and I was a little broke at one powwow. She was admiring me and giving me compliments, and she offered some food, and I said, ma'am, well, I don't have that much money. She goes, I didn't ask you that. I asked you if you were hungry.
That's so funny.
Well, yes, ma'am. She's like, come on, wait, I'm going to see your mouth get greasy.
Oh my goodness.
So,
yeah, they love to feed you. They love to feed you in Indian country. Yeah, I had an experience, and I don't know if you saw my article in Indian Country Today, being Black at a Chickahominy powwow. And so so basically, which is why I asked you the question about people making fun of you. The Chickahominy were having not a bicentennial powwow, but it was a powwow to celebrate the quote unquote coming of Queen Victoria, or whoever the queen was when, Chief Powhatan was in charge. Anyway, they were, it was kind of like the 400-year anniversary of that moment. So I went dancing at this Chickahominy powwow, which we sang, my drums sang at that powwow for years, with the Bob Jandro, Four Rivers, and then Eastern Sky with Mike Cloud. Anyway, so I was dancing with a Cheyenne sister, and we were dancing behind a Seminole brother. And when I came out the first time, the chiefs came over to me, the Atkins, in the Chickahominy powwow, and they were like, "Hey sis, do you have your tribal enrollment card?" And I was like, "No, but you know me, like, that's my Sioux brother over there, like everybody know." They were like, "Well, we're just asking people who don't have their cards not to dance." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll respect that." And then so when they called for intertribal, I was like, "Okay, it's intertribal times. Let me go back out and dance." So again, I'm dancing with my Cheyenne sis and Seminole brother and Danny from Pine Ridge. I think Danny's from Pine Ridge. Anyway, so we were all dancing. And when I came out of the circle that time, I could feel them looking at me. And I came out of the circle, and there were like a couple of the men, like only men, 3 chiefs, maybe a couple of vice chiefs. And they were like, "We told you not to dance because," and I'm like, "What?" And so we had like a really pleasant argument. And I'm like, "You look just like we're cousins. How can you confront me?" I'm like, "Is my regalia bad? Like, am I misrepresenting? Am I being disrespectful? Like, why are you?"
Shonda?
Yes.
Didn't you say intertribal everybody dance?
Yes. Exactly.
Believe it or not, for years before I started dancing, I got that happen to me at Shinnecock.
Wow.
In the early 90s. Okay. And I'd been
Really?
going to Shinnecock for years. As a matter of fact, even later, my mother was running a job training program there. That's in the past. But yeah, even though folks knew me and knew who I was, and interesting enough, that was actually legal, because if you're not on a federally recognized reservation, it's illegal for folks to pull that. But you try to respect where folks are coming from. But same thing. They said intertribal, and they forbid me from dancing again. I said, "Hey, cool, I'm in your community."
Yes. No. Did you experience any racism besides the Shinnecock? Which is interesting because they are totally Black Indian over there, but
but a lot of them are. But again,
I'm sorry.
Past. I haven't been back at Shinnecock since '94. for now because of that. And I've got many young Shinnecock friends that aren't aware of that. And again, as I mentioned before, my mother actually ran job training programs on that reservation.
Okay.
I just haven't felt the vibe to go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And I still have
I danced
Shinnecock
there.
friends.
I danced at that Shinnecock. It was fine for us. There were people who came all the way from Oklahoma to dance, you know, so it was fine. But I understand that sense. Yeah.
Let me share something with you though. The second year, I went back the next year with a member of my drum, and they let us in because apparently they were short of dancers. Then they went to throw us out. They didn't harass my daughter.
Wow.
My daughter was 7 at the time, so I looked at her. I was going to leave, and I said, "Sweetheart, my daughter's traditional name is both African and Seminoles, Nzinga Chechota or Nzinga Sichi. And you know, Nzinga was a warrior queen, right?
Yeah.
She was 7 years old at the time. I thought she was going to kill somebody. I go, sweetheart, you want to out?"
I love it.
So
I love it.
But interesting enough, good things come out of that. I ran into some people from Florida.
Wow.
So it was nice on the way out. And I introduced my daughter to them. At that point, she hadn't met any Seminoles from Florida at the time.
Right. I think it's important for us discussing this because a lot of people, when I give my, readings and lectures, they're like, how will I be received? You know what I'm saying? And so I think this is important. Nichelle, did you want to follow up on that? Or?
Absolutely. I'm enjoying the exchange, and I want to definitely kind of ask some follow-up questions because one of the things that is very apparent to me is like Florida. I hear Florida is so prominent in your experience.
Yep.
Not be as familiar with the Black and Indigenous relationships in Florida via the Seminole and other ethnic groups. But I love that you brought in. I'm just going to kind of go back to my notes. I heard you speak about the Quilombos spaces and Quilombos spaces, the maroon space. And I just wondered if we could go back and touch on that as we are talking about Black and Indigenous relationships. For those who may not be familiar with what maroons are, Quilombos are, and how Black and Indigenous relationships have been ever present since Africans were enslaved in this space.
I'll answer your question in a moment, but I'm going to get totally geeky on you and pull something out since you mentioned that.
Okay.
That's a perfect follow-up question. Yes. Go back to the maroons.
Great movie from Brazil called Quilombo.
Okay.
Okay. It's and I say this all due respect to my Haitian ancestors. Haiti was not the first free Black republic. It's the longest surviving. Palmares was. And I often wonder why historians keep saying that with all due respect. Let me just say that to my Haitian relatives. It's very important because it all was a rebellion and revolt against white supremacy in this hemisphere. But no, this is a dramatization about the Quilombo of Palmares, which lasted from roughly 1605 to the last when the capital city of Macaco fell in 1695. And at one point, it was believed to be 6 major towns with more than 30,000 people, residents of the entire. And it was called by the Dutch and the Portuguese, the Republic of Palmares. I actually have in some of my research notes, actually from a book that's no longer published on Columbia University Press called Africans Abroad. They're the notes from a mercenary that was in on the siege of Macaco, the capital city of Palmares when it fell in 1695.
Wow.
These communities existed all over the hemisphere. And sometimes they were examples of unity, but for all examples of unity, we also, let's face it, had examples of divide and conquer. So these things have been going on, but they were free communities. As a matter of fact, I can name a situation in Mexico, in places like around Guanajuato, Guadalajara, Veracruz, from roughly 1580 to 1630. Alliances between escaped Africans and indigenous people there, military alliances got so powerful that it brought Spanish commerce to a halt. They could not do any caravans with goods unless they had large military escorts because the brothers and sisters were throwing down. So yeah, that's one other example. We can certainly look into Jamaica, the other Jamaica. Now I was boring the show about the Jamaica up here in the pre-show, but certainly there's oral history and people have shared oral history from their grandparents in Jamaica talking about how surviving Arawaks were brought into those maroon communities there.
Yeah.
So we have this history of our alliances. We can even bring it up to today. Our brother George Floyd, who suffered that horror, some of our Ojibwe sisters came down and danced a jingle dress dance on the site of his murder.
I saw that.
And we certainly saw where some Black Lives Matter activists went just to show their support when the actions were happening in Standing Rock some years ago. I know
Mm-hmm.
I myself took part here in some actions where I gave my energies as a musician to perform some benefits for our relatives there.
Yeah.
So we have these instances of unity. Um,
Yeah.
I believe it's Lakota attorney Dallas Goldtooth talks about how there have been ongoing discussions between different indigenous
Mm-hmm.
activist groups and Black Lives Matter. And certainly, I remember a
Yeah.
picture of Angela Davis going to Wounded Knee when that happened in the 1970s. So
Yes. You
always,
know. Yeah.
although there's been divide and conquer, and unfortunately, I got to pick on some of the relatives in Oklahoma for acting stupid from time to time, and you know where to find me.
Right. Yep.
We
Yep.
do
Yep.
find these
Yep.
instances of unity as well.
Yeah, Colin Kaepernick. He went to the Alcatraz Island last year. You know, he was with the indigenous people, just kind of honoring Alcatraz Island and what that meant for our history and our ancestry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for you to kind of bring up those spaces, because I think people are not as aware of this. Like you said, there's unity and there's been
Hmm.
divide and conquer as well. But these relationships, in both senses, have produced legacies of people and culture that are just so underrepresented. And I was thinking about, just a quick note, when I was living in Miami, I read about Key Biscayne, I believe, and how Seminoles and Black Seminoles would escape to an island in the Bahamas.
You're reading my
Yeah.
mind, Nichelle. If I may, Tunasamik, which is a Miccosukee term for pride, former tribal chair, and he was tribal chair on two different occasions, James Billy, reached out and traveled to our relatives in the Bahamas. There's a Seminole community on North Andros Island.
Okay.
And he made overtures to go there. This on his second trip, which I think, it was some years back. I don't remember exactly when now. But he noticed that although language wasn't big there, some other cultural attributes were there. Folks were still making canoes in the old way and baskets. Chairman Billy, and he's no longer tribal chairman, but he wanted to make arrangements for folks from the Bahamas to come to Florida to teach folks how to make the baskets in the old way.
I love this. I love how I love how we moved from your own history and ancestry and your heritage to how African Americans could possibly be received, or even start making our own regalia, but be received at powwows and maybe some ceremonies. And we talked about just doing it respectfully, right? And asking other people, so how did you make your regalia? I'm not asking necessarily you to help me, but would you give me some pointers? So I think that's really important. And then we're going to that unity piece, right? Because we continually have helped each other. Yes, we continually have had that divisive piece as well, going back to the 5 civilized tribes owning Black slaves, but also there were relatives, not just slaves on that trail. People were married into the nations as well. But I love this piece of unity, because I think some Black people still maybe even ostracize us a little bit because they themselves feel denied, with not being connected to the culture. And so it's really important to have this part of that conversation.
A couple of things real quick. Let's get into this whole slavery thing. And folks that know me know I make no apologies for slavery, but I'm going to look at realistically, who were the slaveholders among those nations? They were less than 5%, okay, of the respective nations. And if we look at what was happening in those nations, although slavery wasn't the only issue, there was actually bloodshed long before the American Civil War in those communities. Wow. We're talking Cherokee and Creek, and even to a certain degree among Seminoles and Chickasaws and Choctaws as well, again, before the Civil War. But folks actually went to war behind this stuff.
Yeah.
And then it got exasperated again during the American Civil War. And people often talk about, rightly so, that there were units that fought for the Confederacy. But what about those units that fought for the Union? Let me give you a case in point. The most integrated battle of the Civil War happening in Honey Springs Creek Nation in 1863, when you had Black, red, and white units fighting for the Union and red and white units fighting for the Confederacy. And by the way, the Union won that day. Okay, units like the 1st and 2nd Indian Home Guard, the I don't remember the exact numerical designation, but they were called the U.S. Colored Troops at the time. Now, something interesting was happening during the Civil War. Many of the indigenous units out in Indian Territory had white commanders. The only Indian man, if you will, I knew that had a commission rank in the Army was Elias Parker, a Seneca, who was on Ulysses S. staff. But you didn't have any officers of color in the Union Army. Well, what was happening when you had a white commander and indigenous troops? They couldn't speak the language. So what happened among the Southeastern peoples? Turns out often the Black Indians, if you will, were multilingual. So even though these guys might have been racist in their own right and didn't want to necessarily be with troops of color, they had to keep the black guy alive, because if he got killed, you couldn't communicate with your troops. I'm not making stuff up. You can
right. No, I know.
You know, and it's documented all over the place.
Wow.
Yeah. We just have to do the research. Okay, so we have one last question for you, and then we're going to move to another person, but we have a couple of questions from the audience. And the one that I see is, what's the one about genealogy? Someone asked the question, Lonnie, where has your genealogy taken you on your journey? That's what someone asked. Where has your genealogy taken you on your journey? And we've got a couple of minutes for your answer.
Actually, I know we have a couple of questions too. I'm not sure.
Oh, good. Okay.
More. So, so you have a few in your roster before we move
to.
Yeah.
Well, again, I've never consulted a formal genealogist in terms of my own family, but again, talking with family, finding out amazing things. For example, although I have 2 Seminole connections, the one I can definitely verify, a former slave by the name of, ready for this, George Washington, married a Seminole woman by the name of Hannah. And that's how that one particular line started. There's not so much clarity around the other line, but that's the one line they can talk about. By the way, through that line, I found out that's the line I'm related to John Horse through, by the way.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, just talking to family, doing my own research. And sometimes I was teasing both Danica and Nichelle before about dumb luck, which when it comes to this technological stuff, sometimes dumb luck has me stumble across some other things in terms of my own heritage. Again, speaking at powwows, you all of a sudden find out who you're related to, even though you may have known them for years, when you actually start talking and having these conversations.
Yeah.
That's been my own personal journey, but that's when I went back and said, no one size fits all. But let me go back to something I want to tap on really quickly, Shonda, because I think it's important in terms of ceremony.
Yeah.
That's something you have to be very careful with. I know personally, I never approached anyone about ceremonies, but waited to be invited. And then as it turns out, I've been honored over the years. I've sang for sweats. I've been asked to sing for different sort of occasions. And I feel now it's my responsibility as a singer and drummer. I feel more than honored to do that. And I certainly try to make myself available when the community asks me to do that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Same, definitely.
So continuing with that spirit, we have another question in the chat, and we're talking about these Black and Indigenous relationships, and someone wanted some clarity of why qualify Black Indian? Qualify yourself as Black Indian. Indian knows no color line. So we have that question / comment, and I guess talking about the complexities of identity, if you wanted to address that one.
Okay, spoiler alert. I talk about that in the early pages of my book. Certainly when I'm among traditionalists, and this goes back to the point who you might be accepted by and who not. Among traditionalists, and it's interesting, it's not that they don't see my Africanness, but I have the blood, that's all they want to know. Let me just make this even more personal. The sister whose virtual funeral I attended yesterday, her other half, if you will, I remember first meeting him, a young Tuscarora brother. He was a young Tuscarora man raised in a Black community. And how I met Patrick years ago. I was at a powwow with some tourists, and that's what she looked like, was acting stupid. I just ignored it and walked away. All of a sudden, this young Tuscarora brother in full regalia was up in her face. That's an elder, show him some respect, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, whoa. So that's how I met Patrick and Emily back then. And my heart goes out to Patrick for losing his lady, Emily.
Oh, wow.
The traditionalist, and that's all it turns out he knows a lot of Seminoles as well. Some folks in my tribe. So although he sees where my heritage is, all he knows is that I'm of the blood, and that's all he needs to know. And when I'm around traditionalists, it's not necessarily a Black Indian kind of thing. I think sometimes for the sake of discussion and making narratives clear, we might use that term. And I certainly acknowledge myself, like I said, the title of my book, Both Sides of the Water. I trace my heritage both to Turtle Island, as well as that motherland across the ocean. Olinchi, as we say, I believe Miccosukee for the ocean. So I acknowledge that. But yeah, depending on where you are, you don't necessarily have to refer to yourself as Black Indian or whatever. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. In our communities, in my communities, we don't necessarily say Black Indian when we're like in traditional like groups, we say Indian, you know, and I get a lot of people asking me, what do you prefer, American Indian or Native American? And I'm like, depending on who you're around, you know, for the sake of just talking to people who are outside of the community, I might say American Indian, but when we're in our own groups, we say Indian. We don't say Black Indian.
And by the way, we spell Indian, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, that's among us, so.
Thank you for that clarification. We have a couple more too. Let's see here. We have a question on records asking, did you come across records of actual Africans in your lineage?
You mean as in the motherland?
I assume so.
I didn't, although my father told me some oral history, which I find amazing. Our relatives in the Spanish Caribbean have a saying called La Sangre Llama, the blood calls. It means stuff you feel and know here. I've always felt a kinship with the Maasai, an East African people. I don't know how, but my father said in our oral history, we have Maasai blood. He never gave me an explanation. And I know, unfortunately, our ancestors that were victims of the transatlantic slave trade, perhaps an ancestor from East Africa was taken. But that's the only thing I know in terms of our oral history, and that's on my father's side of the family. Other than that, I don't know any direct connections back to the motherland, especially on my mother's side of the family. But I do know about the Maasai connection, as vague as it might be.
And we hold up oral history. We don't privilege written documents above the oral history, because we know that our family members have communicated for generations after generations through oral storytelling.
Oh, I'm going to get geeky again, but also as a storyteller. The lion is very symbolic in Maasai culture. But one of the stories I do primarily for kids and sometimes adults, is more fun for the kids, is actually a Seminole story about how the lion got in Africa. It's not Kawachobi the panther, but Yatabache, the lion. So what I do when I do it for kids, and especially school kids, I tell the teachers, if you want to do research, it was actually at one point in history, a species known as the American lion. The American lion was a third larger than the African lion. So yes, some of our ancestors at one point were running away from that particular critter. But there is a story of how the lion got in Africa. And what a little bit I know of the language, Elelabate, that's the Miccosukee word for elephant. So I don't remember seeing the elephants running around Florida.
Absolutely.
Not this lifetime.
No, exactly, not in this lifetime.
Yeah, very well put.
And then we have one wrap-up question for the audience. I hope I'm clear on this question. Shawnee, you let me know if I'm clear. It says, is anyone part of a tribe? And I don't know if that necessarily mean like a formal connection, if that's what they're
Yeah, I think that's what they're saying, is like, are you actually enrolled in a tribe? Probably is what they're saying. I'm not enrolled.
Let me be quite clear. I'm not enrolled with the Seminole tribe of Florida, nor the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. I know these folks in Southern Texas are trying to get recognition, but there's the absentee Seminole of Southern Texas, and there's an independent group called the Independent Seminoles in the Western Everglades. No, I'm not an enrolled member, although I've been in touch with members, certainly in Florida, and I have some relatives that are.
I have been offered enrollment from a couple of other nations in the Virginia area, the Cherokee, who are just amazing. And I know I've got connected ancestry to them, but I haven't traced any of my ancestors into that actual tribe. So I was like, thank you, but no thank you. And then I did apply to the Kahari Nation because I traced all my manuals back. When I got my letter back from the Kahari, they said I had missed one ancestor, like placing an ancestor's name, even though I had all the ancestors that were connected to that tribe and that land. And so for me, that letter was kind of validation. It was like, okay, yay. So my ancestors do belong to this tribe. You just don't want to open up your records for me to find that other ancestor. Okay. So I didn't apply to any other nations. I was like, because I know who I am.
And that's my bottom line. Oh, and by the way, I haven't verified this, but there are stories that Nat Turner was not away. Or had not away ancestors.
I'm gonna tell Chief Lynette. I'm a Chief Lynette. She's not the not away chief. Yeah, nice.
And what brought that up? I actually was a consultant years ago for a piece that was never mounted, but it was the Classical Theater of Harlem on Nat Turner. And this came up, although I couldn't verify it, but I found that quite interesting.
Wow. Someone just asked the question Yes, I did my DNA test. I did my DNA because when my book was coming out, Black Indian, I didn't want any like journalist or one of my full blood brothers or sisters to come up to me and be like, "You don't have any Indian in you." So my DNA says that I have over 50% African. I have over 30% European, and then the rest of that is an amalgamation, but definitely I've got my 2% American Indian. And it also says that 7 generations back, I have full blood American Indian ancestors. 4 generations, no, sorry, 6 generations back, I've got full blood African. So actually 6 to 2 full blood African ancestors, full blood Scottish, British ancestor. I don't know who they were. I don't have any connection to them. Yeah, so I have done my DNA, and I know exactly who those full blood ancestors are. The 7 generations, 8 generations back, because I've traced it all the way back to 13 generations. So,
can I make some speculation about your Scottish and Irish heritage? Okay, initially, the Brits pissed off everybody, so there were actually indentured servants that were white. What the British did during the colonial era, they were at war with the Creeks and Cherokees. But what they did as a buffer, they gave land to indentured service, hoping that the indentured service would bear the brunt of any military expeditions coming from the Creeks and Cherokees, which happened initially. But when folks stopped fighting and started talking to each other, when both societies realized the clan system was crucial to both societies, well, that's how you started getting Cherokees and Creeks with Scottish and Irish names. So that's one possible connection right there.
They made relatives, right? They made relations. Yep, yep. We have our next speaker. Hey, Karen, how are you? And Lonnie, thank you so much. This has been really wonderful. This has been fantastic.
You are a wealth of knowledge, and I feel like there's so many ways we could expand this talk. But I think I do want to go back to one of the questions earlier as we segue into Karen, from AHA, is that these narratives are more complex. Our identities are more complex than we've been presented, and we've got to push up against that simplicity, because in that simplicity is the racism, right? And the reason why we can't call our heritage to constantly prove who we are, that we have to that our oral stories are invalidated. So in this show, in this space, I thank you for all challenging these narratives and giving us permission to look back and I like what Shonda said, I think in the first program, like, which grandmother are you willing to deny, right? Like, so us to go back and just really understand the bits and pieces and the big and small of who we are is what we're trying to do, because racism and all the other isms have taken that away.
Well, when I started my journey, my hair was dark, so I need to know.
Oh, when I started mine, my hair was like half.
I need to know, though, who's going to win the book and where to send it, so make sure I get that information.
Sure, absolutely. And Lonnie, you're welcome to stay on with us as we go.
Like I said, I
in case you were jumping off. So we're going to segue into the documents portion of this. Every Sunday that we meet for our knowledge sharing, we're going to have this opportunity to know how to actually trace using the documents. And of course, Karen White of AHA, she is an expert in that, and it builds on our conversation, right? It doesn't invalidate our conversations around the oral histories. It just adds on, if you're going into the circuit court, if someone in your family has these legal documents or written documents to back up your journey. Karen, you can come on the mic. We would love to start this part.
Hey, Karen.
Hello, everyone.
Nice to have you back.
Thank you. I am honored to be back with you. I have certainly enjoyed this session thus far. It has opened up my thought process, so to say.
That's great.
I am really excited. I guess you can tell by my voice and everything. But Yeah, yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think possibly this may be the best place to start is just talking about kicking off from your oral history. Where do you go if you have
Yes.
oral history? I would say the first thing you need to do is to check every document you can come across within your household. Now, I'm taking for granted that you have talked to all the elders, you have talked to the grandmother, the grandfather, and the relatives out in the community. Whether you realize they are your blood relatives or not, they're still your community members and probably your relatives blood wise. But talk to them and don't let it be just the one conversation, because as you pick up different information, you will need to go back and to ask some more questions, and sometimes not asking a question but just dropping a name or a document out or a place that often sparks more conversation within your household. One of the things that you're going to look for is any written information, written in the sense that quite often Bibles hold a great source for family history,
Hmm.
and any old books as well. People often
And
scribbled important dates or events in those particular books. The old family Bibles normally had a section in there for recording birth, deaths, and marriages. My advice to you would be to write down everything that you can find pertaining to that and start utilizing the online sources right now.
mhm.
We are on COVID lockdown, so to say, um, and check for those names and see what you can find on those names. As you're
Can
going,
I
yes.
add family photos, like the family photos, because the back of family photos, even the time stamps of when a family photo was taken, those are incredibly important as well. Yeah.
Yeah. That and the photographer. What shop did they have them done? Where were they? And where were they visiting at that point? Or is this the place where they were working? Because many people left the rural area and went, let's say, to Pennsylvania or to Baltimore. They were following jobs. And they often would have family members come out. They would sit for a portrait or have one drawn, such as the cabinet cards. We're finding that many people in Fauquier not only had the charcoal paintings done in the 16 by 20 size, but also the cabinet cards. And we have an exhibit downstairs in the museum on the cabinet cards. And if you looked at Dr. Gase's documentary, where he talked a little bit about um, okay, I'm losing some voice there, Chandra. Okay, I could see your mouth.
Oh, I muted my mic because I wanted everybody to hear you because I keep saying yes, that's amazing. So I just didn't want to keep saying that. But yes, Henry Louis Gates' documentary is awesome.
Yeah, so if you look at that doing Reconstruction, he'll give you a little background about stereotyping, negative imaging, all the way through Jim Crow, is how the push for African Americans to go out and to take the true images of themselves and to pass it out. And many of those images have come down through the generations into families, and many of us haven't a clue as to who these phenomenal photographs are. But that's where we have to start sharing our unknown photographs out in social media as to what family collection or family home that we find these. And hopefully, a lateral relatives will know or have information pertaining to that. Another resource is newspapers. And the reason I say newspapers because you will find anything from someone, an advertisement for somebody running away, or someone bringing different people in, even exclusions from church, such as Anthony Brown, who was excluded from church uh, because he ran away. And doing Reconstruction, families advertised for information pertaining to the last place that they found their relatives or where they were sold from. So those are extremely, like growing up, I always would check who was getting married in the local newspaper, who died. I guess I was an old soul from way back when, but always check the obituaries just because I would see names that I knew or recognized from visiting grandparents or going to church communities and things like that. But if you start pulling all of those together, and now you can pull up many of the newspapers right online. And my advice is to save up some of those quarters and do that subscription, because you'll find social events where your relatives were in DC, where they had tea and everything else. We are fortunate here in Fauquier because we did have a Black newspaper in the 40s into the early 50s. And
Oh,
each
wow.
community would uh, send in their news articles. I remember when my uncle died in 92, when we were going through the house, under one of the linoleums was a 1943 newspaper. And on that newspaper, it actually had my grandfather's memorial clip that the family had written in to the local newspaper. He happened to die when my mom was about 12, 14 years old. So that meant a lot to us within our family. So you never know what you're going to find. Also in those newspapers, sometimes you may have a strange thing that has happened, such as we had. We opened up the closet, there was a pack of newspaper up on the top shelf, and inside the newspaper were photographs
My gosh. Oh my
taken out as a
gosh.
child from the album because she didn't know who they were.
Come
Asking for
on.
names
That's
on the
rich. That's
back.
wealth to me. It's like
But
treasure.
yeah, exactly. But we have identified some going through lateral cousins, so that's a good thing, and we hope
So obituaries. So what you're saying is obituaries are good places to look as well. And I don't even put that on
yes,
my to do, but I'm gonna start doing, yeah, obituaries. Absolutely.
yeah, we have a whole collection of funeral programs and obituaries here. Um, Check with the local uh, funeral homes to see who has what. And so we have different people that collects them. And over the years, different people have brought in their collection to us, which adds on. So we put their pertinent family genealogical information into our search Past Perfect Museum software, which is wonderful. The other thing I would think that would be extremely beneficial are the school records. Um, the school records that you would find in your household may be a report card. It may be a graduation program. Um, One of the things that I've seen within families is my dad graduated in 41 from Manassas Industrial School. And Manassas Industrial School housed many students from various counties. Like our county did not have a high school for all of the students until 1952. Only a certain number of them would be able to attend a county training school, which was later named Rosenwald. So they would have graduated 11th graders. But that only served a few students in the center district. But then you had 3 or 4 other districts in the county that had to go to Manassas. So he graduated in 41. My husband, who lived and grew up in the southern end of the county, and I grew up in the northern end of the county, his aunt dies, and within her household, they have a graduation program from 1941. So we were able to put my dad's photograph along with that graduating commencement exercise with that program. Look at the different names of all of the people that would have been pictured there, and then to continue taking oral history. So you never pass up an opportunity to rummage through a household. And people save a lot of things. Cards, programs from funerals, family letters. We have my great grandparents' letters, with family letters, where the family wrote a letter when he died in 53. So all of those things give you more information. It tells you where people are coming from. And they actually had their golden anniversary cards in that household. So that would have been 1952 because they married in 1892. So we were able to see who visited them. And once you find then you're going to find different letters, correspondence back and forth. So all of those things give you more and more to build out that family line on. And each time you make another connection, make those notes, write down your source where you received it from, write that oral history down as far as who's giving it to you. That's very important because that puts them in your timeline of life, in your life's history, because you had a connection with a person. And one day you will become the elder should you live long enough. And hopefully you will live long enough to pass that history on to the next generation or the next person, whether it's lateral or a descendant, so that someone else can build that family story out. And so many times when you're working on one part, another door opens and another person needs exactly what you're working on. And this has been our story here at the center. We're working on one project and 5 or 6 other things or people have come in that need exactly what we're working on, and bringing in something else that makes our work a little bit easier because it's another connection. So my advice always is to keep doors open, talk, document, and share everything that you can with the next person. And not to think that it's just about you and your family line or your history, because the history that you think is yours, it belongs to a lot of people. If you go back to great grandparents, you're enriched in multiple bloodlines,
Yeah.
So it's not just about you, and you need to share that information and to make it available to others.
Can I make a quick comment?
Certainly.
When I went home in 2019 to do a talk about my book, Black Indian, the people who first started researching our family showed up. So Gwen Tolk, I have to call out Gwen Tolk. Gwen Tolk was the family historian for the Staffords, and her mother was the person that they interviewed in the Kalamazoo Gazette, because that whole Stafford family, we were listed as the first non-Black free people of color to settle in the Michigan area, and at least in southwestern Michigan in our area. So Kalamazoo, Matawan, Dowagiac. So from her mom to Gwen Tolk, we have another family historian, Angelica Roberts, and she's on the Roberts side. And then now it's me. So I feel like all of the information and history that they have gathered, they shared with me. I shared everything from my Stafford Manual side with them. So it's like a tapestry. It's a quilt, that we can't ignore anyone else's research or whatever they're doing, because it's all a part of a quilt for me, a family quilt. So I love that you're saying that.
Absolutely. I think also I wanted to share really quickly, because I thought when you were speaking, Karen, my great aunt, when she saved basically all of the report cards of her siblings. And I didn't know much about my grandmother, as Karen knows, but as I was working on my podcast, she pulled all those things. She's like, now I haven't looked at these things in years, but apparently you're going to want this. And then she just opens up this treasure trove, and I see my my grandmother's report card with varying grades at different times from the 1940s and 50s. And that is incredible. So that's not something I even had in my mind would exist somewhere. So I think you bring up these points that some places that we don't even think to even look at, or even our elders may not think are as significant as they're dealing with daily struggles, right? With what's happening in the present, may not think, oh, you know what? But once you're on their radar, they start saving things for you. Because now they know. I want to take this opportunity to our question to Shay, based on the beautiful information out to the chat box, and the winner will choose randomly from that. I hope I'm not breaking up, because I see that unstable thing. thing coming up. So to the chat box, here's a question, and the person that we choose today will be the winner of the giveaway. Based on the information that has been shared via Lonnie, Shonda, and Karen, what is a source you can start to investigate in your search? If you're thinking about your family dynamics, is there a family Bible you can think of? Is there a person you have on the map that you may want to speak with? What is a source you can start your search with this holiday season? If you could just put that in the chat, and then we'll choose someone as our winner of the giveaway.
Oh, that's a great. Can we each answer that as well?
Sure. Oh, I like that.
One of the best sources for me to find a connection to family, more family information, but a connection to my family, was researching, finding the deed of the farm that my grandfather owned. And we did not know the history of that farm because he only owned 5 acres at the time that I was living on it with my mom. But the 5 acres had been whittled down from 200 acres that his mom owned. She had inherited that land from her father, Willis Roberts, who was the son of one of the first founders of the Roberts settlement in Indiana. So I was tracing the lineage and realizing that we had been not just landowners, but we were like, she was profitable with with the land that she'd inherited from her dad. So I felt incredibly enriched knowing the history of my family, but I got all of that from finding the land deeds. So that's something I think would be interesting for people, because everybody owned land back then. It wasn't like we weren't renters. Everybody owned their land. So
that's an important point. So that is one. Deeds. We had family Bibles. If we could just get in the chat, and then if we have, and we'll use this minute or so to do so. And any other thoughts, last thoughts as we start to?
Lonnie, did you find any like a specific piece of documentation that you want to share in terms of what other people can do?
No, I don't know what I could share that hasn't been shared already. And I think both you and Karen are a wealth of knowledge and information in your own right. I'd just be repeating myself at this point, but again, start with family. And as Nichelle so quite rightly pointed out, don't throw away oral tradition and oral history. That's a very key source and often will open the doors to many other things.
Absolutely.
Shonda, you brought up a great topic when you talked about the deed research. For me, when I'm looking at deeds, I'm thinking of family land and lines, because if you follow the land, you'll find your families. Starting with the 1870 census, if you can find wherever they are at that point and start tracing backwards, if you find who they received property from, whether it was willed or deeded, or who they sold it to, those will lend itself friendly to opening up a wealth of information. Ours goes back to 1870 on one side, and the lateral ancestor, my great-great-grandmother's sister, deeded property in 1854. So they're landholders as well as people that sharecropped in the area. So it's extremely interesting as to whether
that history is
purchased
amazing,
or whether they've filed a claim against anything. Trust. So it's there. The information is there.
Mm-hmm. Do we have a winner yet? Oh, you're muted, Nichelle, I'm sorry.
Oh, I am
okay.
So sorry. Sorry about that.
I was like,
yes, we just got a key. Just to wait one moment as a winner is selected for the giveaway. So, Lonnie, did you want to share your book cover again? Share your book with us again so everyone can see what our giveaway is. Both Sides of the Water.
Right.
The full title, Both Sides of the Water, Essays on African Native American Interactions.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. there's so much. I mean, there's so much that I want to go into, and I'm like, I can't because that'll be a whole nother conversation. But so we'll just have to like figure out how to bring you back on. Figure out how to bring you back on.
Again.
Yeah, no, to sing. That would be awesome. Oh, we've got a winner, I think.
Absolutely, we've got a winner, and I hope that we're saying this right. Newly Natural, maybe your name?
J Newly Natural.
Yes. Okay, beautiful. We got the confirmation.
Yay!
Okay.
Congrats.
Yeah, congratulations. So we will definitely be, if you could just go ahead and inbox us your contact information, and we'll get that out to you just in time for the holiday season to learn more about the history and stories of African and Indigenous interactions.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everyone, for being a part of the show. Lonnie, you are amazing. Thank you. Karen, every time you come on here, I grow an inch. It's like an inch as a genealogist. I'm like, thank you. And Nichelle, you've been awesome.
Thank you, everybody. This is so wonderful. And I look forward to just a note that next month we will not have our usual scheduled show because it's the holiday season. We want people to holiday it up, even if it's virtually. Enjoy. And then we'll return in January.
Research. Do your research for December, and then you can come back when we come back in January, and then you can tell us, I found such and such.
Exactly. Follow up on that question, right? What is the source that you got into this holiday season?
Well, let me tell you the holiday greeting in the language, which is roughly Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. So.
Thank you so much.
And I say, Shonda, thank you very much for having me today.
No, Miigwech, thank you so much. I'm incredibly grateful, Lonnie. You are one of our community historians, so I'm incredibly grateful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Oh, we have to shout out I Love Ancestry because we're sponsored. This is a show sponsored by I Love Ancestry and Mother Earth Sanctuary. You can find us all on Instagram or Facebook. And Nichelle Calhoun has an incredible, Perpetually Black?
Perpetual Blackness, yes.
Perpetual Blackness podcast. So we're all out here in the community, across the country and the world, actually, because our I Love Ancestry founder is out of the country. So we're just all around doing this research, this genealogy, honoring our ancestors in every way that we can.
Absolutely. And AAHA, por favor, don't forget that one. AAHAFauquier.org is the website. Join us as well. We love having and being in this space with you all.